We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
G'day and welcome to another live recording of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the mold of modern manhood to prove there is more than one way to be a man. Now, I want to pose the question, why is purpose so important for men? Why do we as an organization have thousands of men every year from all over the world come to our men's circles and our weekend trainings to identify their purpose in life? Well, for many of us, it's a question that we wrestle with, especially when life starts to feel like a loop, whether it's work, stress, responsibility, the same Monday to Sunday. Well, today's guest, Evan LaPointe, has spent years studying the science behind purpose, not just in theory, but in how the brain actually responds to it. Evan is the founder of Core Sciences and has taken his experience and this research and worked with some of the biggest companies in the world, Google, Microsoft, Adobe, to help them and their teams find deeper meaning in what they do. Today, he's here to help us understand why purpose matters so much for men and how we can start reconnecting with it in small and meaningful ways. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. So we met in a professional context at the Sidebar Summit out in San Fran a couple of weeks ago. And I always appreciate in professional context when conversations go a bit deeper. And that's where our conversation went. And I could tell your passion was just exuding from you when we were talking about purpose. And so I want to kick things off by jumping into kind of the brain science behind it. So what's really happening in a person's brain when they feel a sense of purpose? And really, why does that matter so much to understand while we're kind of grinding day to day in adult life?
Yeah. Great opener. Purpose is something we're supposed to feel. Among other things, we're supposed to feel fear, stress, craving, passion, not in the purposeful sense, the other kind of passion, but the, we get mixed up, certainly in our own lives and in the way the world works today, not realizing, the most basic idea of all, which is we have brains in our heads and they have a job to do. And when we wake up every morning and we go through our day, it's the brain that handles everything coming in through our ears and our eyes and our nose, trying to help us make decisions and take actions. And some of those decisions and actions can be self-serving, they can be reward-seeking, they can be safety-seeking, or they have this option of being purposeful. And in today's world, there's a lot of stuff that can stress us out. A lot of people out there trying to stress us out. A lot of people trying to make us activate the fight or flight response. A lot of people trying to activate this reward-seeking response in the brain. And to a much lesser extent, a group of people trying to activate the purposeful state of the brain. So it might be helpful to lay out some basic structure of how the brain handles this job of taking in sensory information about the world around you, thinking about the world around you, and then making decisions and taking actions. Because the brain works just like an assembly line. And there's a 3-step process in the brain. Step 1 is the brain has to figure out what its intentions are. And all of these emotions of fear, stress, craving, and purpose, like you mentioned, are just different types of intentions. They're kind of like the category that our action will fit into when we pick an action later. So if we pick being defensive as an action, we know that our intentions are safety centric, right? We're trying to get ourselves back in better standing. That's why the action is defensiveness. If we pick, cutting a corner to be more efficient and save some time, we know that our mind is in the intention of reward seeking. It's trying to get something and it's trying to use less energy to get it. And if we are seeing somebody, as simple as writing a very well-intentioned email saying, hey, Brandon, here's a question you asked me. Great question. I did some homework to make sure that this is a good, useful response to you and that you're going to be successful. Here are the answers. I'm here for you if you have any questions. I want to make sure this works for you. That's purpose, because my intentions have to do with someone other than me. They have to do with another person out there in the world, and they have to do with impact. So once your brain in the first step of the assembly line chooses that impact is the objective, and that the impact is on another person or another group of people, not myself, the conditions for purpose have been met in the human brain at the intention's first step. And then the second step is focus. And the third step is ability. So essentially, once your brain intends to help another person in this purposeful state, or to have an impact that is helpful, right? So people donate their time to Habitat for Humanity or to go to YMCA and work with kids or whatever. What's the intention there? The intention is impact on other people. And in the audience that you have in this podcast, a lot of people have this top of mind. But when the word purpose comes up, they're like, well, I'm not Oprah Winfrey. I'm not Jesus. How do I have purpose? Well, I just explained, you can have purpose in an email. You can have purpose in painting a fence. You can have purpose in all sorts of things. But the brain just has to be thinking about other people, and it has to be thinking about impact. And then you have to focus. You can't just daydream about it. You've actually got to apply real mental focus, productive focus, or even deep work is a common term, to do things really, really well. And then the third step is, once you're in this good intention and once you apply focus, you actually have to have the ability to do it. And simple example that I share with everybody is, Brandon, I could have the most purposeful intention and the deepest focus to draw you a beautiful horse right now, but that is an intention my ass can't cash. Right? That's a check, because I'm not good enough at drawing to fulfill my intentions. And this is why human beings have to work on their abilities. And we can talk about what ability actually is in the brain. Is really fascinating. But you have to have both intention and ability, or you can't turn your intentions into reality. And in the professional setting, that's as clear as day, that there are some really well-intended professionals out there, and they want to do a good job, but they actually refuse to learn the new things, to think a little harder, to use their imagination, to actually cash the check that their intentions have written. And so they're in their own way, and we as humans are often in our own way. So yeah, we're supposed to experience purpose. I think for your audience, this is really important to understand. You are supposed to experience purpose. It's in your brain. It's the release of oxytocin and serotonin. Like, your brain literally drugs you when you are feeling purposeful. It's the way it rewards you, just like it gives you dopamine when you're craving, just like it gives you cortisol when you're stressed. It gives you chemicals to support the journey of purpose, to connect you with people, etc. But not only are we supposed to experience it ourselves, we're supposed to share it, right? That's as a species, we are literally designed to share purpose, but we live in a society and we act as leaders in many cases to share stress, or to share reward seeking, and to share self-centeredness instead of sharing purpose. And this is like the biological underpinning of what we consider shitty cultures in a company. So it's really cool to tie these pieces together.
So let's zoom out a second and do a bit of a recap here. So there are 3 things that the brain seeks, right? These are safety, rewards, purpose. That's how it's framed, right? And then when we're seeking any of those things, we need to identify the brain's intention. So what is it trying to seek? Like, is it like a form of equilibrium, perhaps, or trying to seek?
Well, the brain's going to do this automatically. So, this is why we experience conundrum. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a meeting and a question gets asked, and you're like, boy, I know what the right answer is, but my ass is grass if I say it. That conundrum, that stimulus, is basically saying, here's a purposeful option, and here's a safety option right in front of you.
So, okay.
And then if you feel your brain leaning one way, then your brain might be choosing the wrong one sometimes.
That's so insightful to think about. Okay, what do I naturally orient towards? Because I want to put this in the context of like a men's group. And so, give you some insights. I'm not sure if you've sat in men's circles or small groups or anything of the sort before, but, we attract a lot of men that are looking for, number one, usually first and foremost, they're looking for support for themselves. And usually not far behind or interchangeably, it's also a desire to provide some sort of value. And that's also culturally, I think, built into a lot of men and societally expected that, okay, as a man, I need to provide value. I need to support. I need to fix. I need to help, which is funny because when they come into our circles, we're like, yeah, we're not fixing each other. We're just here to hold space. But using that context, I can think about how, like, okay, I come to a circle, I'm in conflict with my wife or a friend or a colleague, and I'm seeking that support. My nervous system is really activated right now. And so I'm there seeking perhaps safety. And so I can advocate for that intentionally and say, hey, I'm looking for advice. I'm looking for feedback. I'm looking for support right now as I kind of unpack this experience. There's a safety side, right? But I could also be coming in, maybe things are good on the home front and I'm there and I'm leading the circle. And I know that in my experience of leading circles that men often come perhaps feeling a bit lost. They themselves are in that place of heightened stress, fight, flight, freeze. And I lead a process or take them through a questioning round that has them be able to take a breath, some more happy hormones come out, and then boom, my purpose is then being served, right? Which in essence, I guess, has some sort of reward. Now, for me personally, I like bringing a lot of people together. So when I show up and there's 14 people in the room, perhaps there's a reward element there built into it as well. Is that tracking based on your
Oh, yeah. Well, so yeah, these systems in the brain, they can kind of sequence and they can work together.
Okay.
The reward system of the brain is not a bad thing, right? When we get all passionate about something and want to chase something and we want to get something, that's just biology at work, and a lot of people out there are going to try to create some sense of shame around biology, which is so stupid. It makes me want to puke.
How so?
Well, just people being like, well, if you crave something, you can, and in your men's groups, right?
Right. So yeah,
there's all sorts of,
if you're addicted to porn, you're inherently broken. And
it's just, your brain is designed to be addicted to porn. That's why millions of people are addicted to porn. So
yes,
it's what we struggle with in, it's kind of funny to use the phrase modern society, because hypothetically modern society would be using all the tools available to it, and primitive society would just not have those tools available to it. And that's why they are primitive. Unfortunately, in modern society, there's a great quote by the author Dan Pink, who wrote the book Drive. Mm-hmm. And Dan said, there's a mismatch between what science knows and what business does. And it's a really good encapsulation in the business world. And the same thing is true in other parts of life. But it's a really good encapsulation of the idea that we're not using the tools we have. And that's stupid. So when people are out there on these shame campaigns, they're just ignorant. You can't go to somebody and say, you shouldn't be doing something that the brain is literally built to do. Yeah. You should instead be saying, hey, the brain is built to do this stuff. If you feel like there's some bonus and you're thinking about hurting people to get it, like the brain is kind of built to do that. Here's how we're going to handle that so that you can come out of the other side feeling good about yourself as a human being.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go upstream to automatic biological responses and try to like shoot our brain with a laser and turn these things off, or worse yet, just try to think our way into a lobotomy. That doesn't work. But if you're not ignorant, then you will actually go in and say, this is a natural occurrence.
Yeah.
And here's how we're going to handle it. Here's how we rise above it. Because as humans, we have these layers in our brain, like this basic instinctive layer, but then we have this intellectual self-control layer on top. And the self-control layer is why we don't throw the punch when we want to throw the punch. It's why we don't call somebody a name when we want to call them a name. It's why, and it's why we choose better words and better actions.
Yeah, the gap, right? Minding the gap between stimuli received and then the
Yeah.
instinctive response, and instead going with a more thoughtful response.
And you have to
I
teach yourself how to do that. That's not you don't
yeah,
get that for free.
I love the experience. I mean, I'm 9 years into men's work now, which is relatively short compared to most of my peers who have been kissed by the silver mists of time and been doing this work for 30, 40 years. But, I have a man that I meet in some circumstance or area of life, and they come to a men's circle, and you can see them just so like their nervous system is freaking out, like they're really nervous. But as people start to share, it's like, oh, I have permission to maybe take a risk. And some men that are introverted, maybe typically masculine that you might call them, they'll share something like, I broke my commitment to my wife and I fell back into porn addiction or something. And the whole room's like, oh yeah, right on. Like, been there, am there,
Mm-hmm.
cool. And to see that person experience that, holy moly, I'm not broken. Like, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person struggling. I'm not the only person. It's like I can almost see them, why they're sharing that in the first place. There's probably a purpose element around it. They may not be thinking reward, or the brain might not be seeking reward, but there's a purpose element. But in seeking purpose, they're rewarded with the safety.
Exactly right. And that's that's what's so cool about purpose. I mean, purpose can really require a lot of courage at times. But then if you pick it over the safety, if you pick it over the reward, then you just get the reward afterwards, or the safety afterwards.
Yeah.
So, you think about, not cutting that corner to do a better job. Then 6 months later, you're really grateful that you didn't cut that corner. You think of yourself as a better person. You look at the output as a better output. So you still get the reward. You still get the dopamine. You still get the endorphin. But it's a different. I kind of help people understand the difference between a reward and in the sense of fulfillment. And fulfillment feels rewarding, but fulfillment is much more rewarding than a reward, right? Finishing a workout, which I need to do a lot more of, by the way, but finishing a workout is a different kind of a reward than eating a bag of chips. They're both dopamine, but one is an earned dopamine, and it does feel different, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I think, you mentioned something that I forgot to answer, which is a lot of people show up in these men's groups feeling a certain way about things, afraid, needing safety, etc. And like I mentioned earlier, we are, as a species, supposed to share purpose. It's not supposed to be a private experience. And because we are so deprived of that in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces, sometimes in our families, we go looking for it. In these men's groups, this is kind of the oasis where people find it. And you heard when we were at Sidebar, the words people used to describe why they like Sidebar were the same words, which is that in this place, I feel safe, I feel supported, I feel this, I feel that. Well, what are they really saying? Outside of this place, I don't feel supported. I don't feel safe. I don't feel this. Because they wouldn't be saying those words if they were like, oh yeah, this is one more place where I feel all these great things. Yeah. It's because at work, everybody's such a dumbass, focused on safety and focused on rewards. And they've completely blinded themselves to the emptiness of those things. And the fact that doing purposeful work actually makes a more successful business than doing reward-centric or safety-centric work. Those companies actually win markets, because markets are exchanges of value. It's no surprise that the business producing the greatest value for the market is going to win the market. Yes. Like, that's like not that difficult of a formula to understand. Yeah. And yet everybody's sitting here talking about what do we get from the market, instead of what do we give to the market.
There you go. So there's for context for those listening in our kind of Mankind project, or if you're coming in as a podcast listener, Sidebar is a company that I work for as an executive coach and meeting facilitator. And it's generally folks in tech coming together in these little pods or masterminds to support each other bi-weekly through their work challenges. But more often than not, what they're there to do is connect with human beings outside of their own companies to get different perspectives, and to also give as much as they're there to receive. In fact, those in the community who I believe do the best networking and the best business are the ones who have a giving mentality first and foremost, and then trust in the law of reciprocity to kind of pull things around, which is really cool. So there's some context there for those of you wondering what is sidebar. Before we move on, there's one little piece I want to bring here. So you mentioned the brain's intentions: safety, reward, purpose. Then the focus is necessary. Let's just round that down to do the work. Do the work. Put your time and energy into it. Be intentional with that. Use the word deep work. But you mentioned that a lot of people have the first two covered, but they're missing the ability piece, which I can resonate with so much. And it made me think of when I first got involved in men's work. I immediately wanted to get into like men's coaching, but I hadn't really done enough of my own work. I mean, and there's still work to do, but I'm only 1-2 years into my men's work journey. And all of a sudden I'm like some men's work authority trying to lead workshops and do coachings. And it really, like, minor wins here and there, but for the most part was kind of, I felt like I had a mask on and that I was faking it. So give us some examples or perhaps some ways in which we can almost qualify ourselves to be in a position to follow through on the ability piece, because many of us want to achieve incredible things, but we're missing that experience. We're missing that knowledge. There's a gap there. So how do we wake ourselves up to that gap?
Yeah. Great question. And I think this is going to resonate with most people because, I mean, hopefully everybody, because there's no such thing as perfect ability. I'm sure Michelangelo had to learn a thing or two before painting the Sistine Chapel. He didn't just go like, let's raw dog this thing. Yeah. So I think what most people find helpful is to understand how ability works in the brain. Because again, I just want to keep coming back to let's understand what the brain is literally built to do. And then we can work with the brain instead of trying to work against the brain. So the example you brought up earlier about the shame of falling back into porn addiction, if you are trying to kind of eliminate that at its source, the desire part that the brain has, you can't. That's you're working against the biology and function of the brain. It will never ever work unless you literally go in, hire a neuroscientist to go in and scoop out that part of your brain. And they're not going to do it because it's not legal. You have to go to, I'm sure you could fly to some country where they do it, but not in the U.S.
Frontal lobotomies are not
exactly right
popular procedure these days. Yeah.
So we want to understand how the brain works so we can work with the brain and allow it to be a tailwind for us instead of a headwind for us. And when it comes to ability, we got to recognize, and we should talk about relationships too, because the brain is also designed to manage relationships and store certain information about relationships, just like it's designed to store what we're going to talk about here and about ability, which is every brain automatically stores your reality. And you can think of that as your memory. Every book you've ever read might not be perfectly stored in your brain, but in some way you got bits and pieces and concepts and ideas and sound bites and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. So everything you've read gets stored. Everything you've lived, experienced, learned, done, heard gets stored. And this is the part that your brain thinks is reality. And the problem is, it's a good thing, right? It's good to learn more, to experience more, etc. But the downside is that if you only use this part of ability, which a lot of people do, academics, like the term academics, when used in a negative sense, this is why it's negative, because they have all this knowledge, but they're not going to use the other parts of the brain, which is reasoning and imagination. So they're kind of stuck in this rut of only the stuff that they've personally seen and lived is real, and nothing else is real. And you'll watch people argue and they'll use phrases like, well, in my experience, and you go, oh, in your tremendous 0.0000001% of the world's knowledge experience. Yeah. You don't matter. Your experience doesn't matter.
Sheldon Cooper, Big Bang Theory is comes to mind.
Perfect example. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and it's not to diminish lived experience. It still has value, but you have to realize your brain is also designed to say, well, okay, that's what I've lived. Can I go beyond what I've lived and read and seen using these other abilities? And especially if you've lived something that is anomalous or wrong. And this is where people hold all these beliefs in their minds. Like, most people believe the phrase biased action, right? That's a popular phrase. If you use your logical part of your brain to process what would happen to the average team if we told them to have a biased action. Or worse yet, if we gave them biased action as a set of keys to give them permission to justify their actions, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to do exactly what we see in 99% of cases, which is, hey, Brandon, let's think about this. We're about to make a huge mistake and piss a bunch of customers off. Or I'm about to, you never apply this in your family, but what if dad was like, let's just have a biased action and tell the kids that we're getting a divorce? And like, without ever thinking through, how do I do this well? Well, you're going to have a train wreck on your hands. And that's exactly why the phrase ends up most of the time causing train wrecks instead of causing what it's supposed to cause, which is learning and iteration and, give it a shot and confidence and these types of things.
Yeah.
And it can do the good part. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like when I work with professional teams, I just do what you just said, which is I just say, just change the word action for the word impact. We have a bias to impact. That basically means if we're archers, right? Bias to action means fire the arrow anywhere, fire it near your own foot. Bias to impact means aim and fire, do both. So there's an impact, right? You hit the target. And we're just like, if we get stuck in this kind of, oh, well, I know this, it's in my knowledge and it's in my memory and I believe in it, it might be totally illogical. So our brains have reasoning, which is logic, causality. Like we can think through, okay, causally thinking about the phrase bias to action would be us saying, okay, do we actually believe that if we put the words bias to action in a box and then we put great outcomes in another box, we can draw an arrow from one box to the other, and that works 100% of the time. That's what causality is.
Okay. Actions are just the means.
Yeah. Exactly right.
Yeah.
So if we wanted great outcomes, we'd probably draw a lot more boxes on the left side of the diagram that would be inputs to this good outcome. And that's how we think logically and causally about things. And that's what's cool about that is our reasoning is how we understand our reality. Because we can have a bunch of flashcards of reality. Like I read this book, I saw this phrase, I had this experience, but do I really understand why that happened, why it worked, etc.? Our reasoning is what digs into why and digs into cause and effect, not just patterns. And then our imagination is how we escape reality. So if you've ever met like a visionary, they don't live in reality. Their brain is not sitting there saying, well, let's take what we're given. Their brain is saying, this is just a moment in time. And in my head, there's a totally different world. And it's a better world in the following ways. And I've worked backwards from that better world and paved a road from today to that future so that we can actually get there. Yeah. And that's what being a visionary is using your imagination to escape reality. And these academics that are just rutted in reality, which, by the way, the brain, without telling you, prefers to use your reality because it's the lowest energy ability in your head. Imagination uses more energy. Reasoning uses more energy. So we always consider it easier to look up the answer in our memory and be like, oh, I've already done this once before. I painted a fence here where I grew grass. I moved from Atlanta to the mountains. Growing grass in Atlanta does not require the same skill set as growing grass in your yard in the mountains. Yeah. It's a different species of grass, dealing with different stressors, dealing with different humidity, and if I just said, oh, I used to water my lawn this many times, this much, and this much fertilizer and all this stuff in Atlanta, I'm just going to take that and bring it over here. I haven't applied any reasoning to discover that there's all these differences between these two. And this is exactly, I work mostly in the business world, but I also do a lot of individual coaching. But this is exactly what people fall into the trap of, is I'm going to copy the way I grew my grass in Atlanta once I moved to Park City. And then you fail, and then you learn.
Yes. So when I came to Sidebar, what I had in my application was the lived experience, the trench time as a facilitator, as a coach. I mean, for most of my life, all of my adult life, I've been coaching in some form of fashion, but it wasn't the bachelor's degree. It wasn't the experience in tech. It wasn't those things that I could tick off in my application. So when I came in, I had a lot of confidence in the reps on the coaching side. But when I came into a new context, which was working with tech leaders, I knew this much about tech, Evan, when I came in, zero. And so I'm working with tech leaders, and there's a specific structure and framework to follow. Naturally, I went in with confidence thinking this is going to be a knockout of the park. First call, give myself a 6 out of 10. Next 10 calls, average a 7 out of 10. But now that I'm 200 plus circles in since joining the company, it's like, okay, now that confidence is there. More confidence in my ability to be able to walk on with minimal prep and do a bang up job if need be.
Yeah. Well, and confidence is such an important word, especially for your audience. When you think about confidence, confidence is related to your ability. It can also be related to your intentions, right? If you are a purposeful human being, you deserve to be a confident human being. Because when you're in a room full of people, you might be the only person there thinking about anybody other than yourself. And that's a reason to have confidence that your intentions are actually better than most other people that you're in the middle of a discussion or a meeting with. But then when you come to ability, where is everybody's ability rooted for the most part? In their knowledge, in their reality, in their experience. And this is why people have these way overconfident attitudes and actions, and then they faceplant with this confidence. Confidence is actually, if you're a genuinely confident person and you look at this reality, reasoning, and imagination, these three places where your brain can reach for answers, for ability, confidence needs to live in your reasoning, not in your reality. You have to come to terms with the fact that your lived experience and your knowledge is minuscule. But if you can be a logical thinker, so in your case, coming to Sidebar, working with tech people and say, okay, logically, what is similar to what I've done before? What's not? What do I not know? What have I not thought through? What are these people's problems likely to be different than the people that I've worked with in the past? If you use your reasoning and your logic, then you can enter that conversation confidently, even if you don't know stuff, because now you're confident you're going to ask the right questions in order to be as helpful as possible. And you'll notice this kind of natural facilitation role is what you feel like instead of being an expert, right? The confidence in your knowledge and your reality turns people into self-proclaimed experts.
Yeah.
If you instead are confident in your reasoning, it turns people into self-proclaimed facilitators. And to me, the term facilitator means I'm here to make sure we get this right. Expert means I'm here so we can get it right. I'm right. And well, the facilitator will outperform the expert 10 times out of 10 because they're going to get the expert's knowledge, and then they're going to get someone else's, which is going to make it 5 or 10% better, or maybe twice as good. So the facilitator kicks the expert's ass. And that's in knowing that you're going to kick every expert's butt makes you a much more confident person. So when I walk into a room, usually I do know the most about a subject when I'm asked to come into a room. That's why I was asked. But I never play the role of expert and say, this is what we're going to do. I say, okay, here's a starting point. It's still wet clay. Everybody get your hands on this thing and make it better, make it better, make it better, make it better. Because by the time this meeting's over, this is going to be the best thing it can be. That's what I'm here to do. And my ego is not a part of that. And if somebody else comes in with their spurs on their boots, being all confident in their knowledge, we're going to dress them down so they can be a facilitator and be additive too, instead of being declarative and confident. And that's how you get to the best outcomes.
So let's run an example here. So, I've been facilitating men's groups throughout those 9 years. And so, there's a couple reps under the belt there. And I have peers and friends and mentors in my life that have done thousands of the bloody things. And so if I take an example, let's just say a man is looking for support let's just say they're checking in with fear and shame and they want to do some deeper work around that. So I stand up with them in the center of the circle. And so what's going to color my reality is what I know of this man so far, the context I have or the little context I have, what he's sharing about emotions that he checked in and the context that he's providing. But as I'm gathering that information, it then goes into my reasoning of, okay, other times when I've had men stand up around this, it opens these possibilities. These are the questions I could be asking. So my brain starts to filter the information to identify, okay, so what is the reason why this man is standing up, and what is the reason I'm the one facilitating that I can help them in this process? But then the imagination piece, which is really cool, is where I might then go, all right, So this man's checking in with fear and shame because he's been on the couch for 2 years, hasn't got a job, not seeking relationships, and is kind of throwing some things away. I go, okay, let's set up a metaphorical casket and have them lay in the casket and have everyone stand around and say, what would they be saying at this person's funeral if this was the path that they continued to lead, but get him to give the dialogue, get him to tell them what they're going to say. So anyway, this just is an example of where like the brain can go into thinking, all right, doesn't fully recognize or feel the impact of this inaction. Let's fast forward to a visualization of them at their death's door or at their funeral, and what are people going to say? And anywho, that's where my brain goes when I think about the imagination side of things.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, it's you went right through it, which is, what do I know? That's reality. What is the cause, and what would cause good outcomes? The word cause is reasoning. That's a reasoning idea. And then you go to imagination, which is where all this kind of creativity, all this experiential kind of stuff comes from. And yeah, you could just say in that moment, yeah, you shouldn't do that. And that's what reality-centric people are going to do. The academic, if we're being ridiculous for a second, there are people in this world that would say, well, 80% of people that are doing what you're doing die early, so you should stop. Mm-hmm. And they think they've done a good job.
Yeah. Well, they'll think that psychosomatic experiences or somatic experiences only have a 20% chance success rate, so you're wasting your time.
Yeah, 100% right.
Yeah.
And so, and these are the people that say, 50% of marriages end in divorce like the day you're getting married, right?
Yeah.
And you're just
which is outdated data, by the way. Super.
Yeah, well,
data.
But it's also, I call reality and reasoning like opposite sides of the flashcard. So let's just say, for sake of argument, that data is current. On one side of the flashcard, you've got a pattern written, a fact, or what most people think of as a fact. And that pattern is 50% of marriages end in divorce, or 80% of people doing what you're doing don't ever get better. On the other side of that flashcard, there's a formula that explains all the variables that contribute to the fact on the other side of the flashcard.
Yeah. Counseling, community, support,
exactly,
doing the work.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's reasoning, is the other side of the flashcard, which is to say, when you say, okay, take the statistic that 82% of managers are effectively bad managers. That's a Gallup statistic. And I think that bad managers, bad leaders is the biggest business problem in the world. It's like this invisible problem, and everybody's like, no, we got to get better at data, better at innovation, better at design, better at products, better at customer success, better at whatever. Well, if you have bad managers, you're undermining any other skill you have. So you can have those skills, right? Having bad managers doesn't mean you don't have good sales teams, but it means you have a good sales team that doesn't want to work, doesn't want to win because they hate their manager. And 70% of people say their manager has a bigger impact in their life than anybody else in their life. Yeah. Their spouse, their therapist, and so on. It's crazy.
Right.
That's where we are. And this is why, like, when you meet people, sidebar, your men's groups, whatever, they're not coming to get the safety and the support here because they're getting it everywhere else. They're coming because they're not getting it everywhere else, because this statistic that 4 out of 5 managers are bad. So that's a stat, which basically means as a job applicant or as a manager, that it's just a 4 out of 5 chance that I'm screwed. Well, let's turn the card over to the other side and look at the variables. And what we're going to see is when managers know how people work, they understand personality, they understand how the brain forms relationships, how trust works, these types of things, they are almost entirely guaranteed to be a great manager.
Yeah.
So the problem isn't that 4 out of 5 humans suck at managing other humans. The problem is that these other variables, we're not doing anything at all about them. Yeah. And we're expecting the outcome to look this way. And in your case, exactly right. Like, yes, 20% of the time it works and 80% of the time it doesn't. So we should just give up. Well, no, what are the variables on the other side of the flashcard that show us how to move the dials, move the numbers, and and be successful when most people aren't? And that's just what all the more thoughtful people do. And what's cool is people that, as soon as you get your mind really, really tuned to reasoning, and it's a process. And I coach a lot of people how to shift from a reality-based mind to a reasoning-based mind. But as soon as you get there, you see the world through these variables, and you know, oh, I got a lot of tools to change how things end up.
Well, it also encourages an internal locus of control as well. It
100%.
empowers people to be a part of that change. So if we say that, that 4 out of 5 managers either fail or are the reason why someone quit, their job and whatever those stats are, but then you arm people going into management with and here's the qualities of those managers that fail. Here's what they demonstrate. Here's what they don't do. They don't communicate effectively. They don't manage conflict effectively. They don't own their mistakes when they make them. They don't take ownership. You can identify those things and make those apparent and make those clear, so that you can then inversely provide the formula for success. Because we see the same thing a lot if we talk about like domestic violence, like far greater percentage of domestic violence cases happen from the hands of men. And so we can look at that stat and go, men are the problem. Okay. Which is where a lot of attention is drawn towards men and boys behaving badly, is that men and boys are the problem. But if the conversation stops there, or if the blanket statement is that, then we're just left with that sentiment.
Yeah,
but
that's
if we can say
with academics.
But if we can say, 80% of men who commit sexual violence acts, 2 were sexually abused at some point in their life, we can then go, there you go. Let's go. And not saying, we're not saying you really can confidently say there's a causality piece there, right?
Mm-hmm.
In most of those cases, to then go a layer deeper and go, alrighty, what systems, structural family dynamics and systems lead to these things happening? Well, oftentimes it's a family member, an older family member who lives in the house. It could be a single parent scenario. And the deeper and deeper and deeper you dig, the more you can start to get insights into how can we begin to mitigate these things from happening? How can we support single parent families to have the community resources and structures so that these kids have multiple male role models in their lives? So it isn't just on dad, who may or may not be there. It isn't just on mum to have to hold that role as well. So I love it. We're not getting stuck in the stats. We're looking at, okay, stats are good. What is the meaning we make of it? How do we identify the ways that we can effectively approach with that information? How can we nudge those stats in a different direction?
Exactly right. And that's what, like, the whole field of science is kind of it looks at stats from the opposite direction. Stats are, a lot of people look at stats as like, oh, this explains how things work. No, if you go experiment and you pull a bunch of different levers, then you can break any statement of this is how things work, right? 50% of divorces, or 50% of marriages end in divorces. And I do hate to keep citing an old statistic, but if you say, well, like, that's a fact, well, no, here's all the levers that break the fact.
Yeah.
And so you need to go experiment to figure out everything that takes the thing everybody believes is true and makes it untrue. And when you know that as a human, then you have control over the world around you.
Yeah.
Right. You don't just get what you get with your children. You don't just get what you get with your wife. You don't just get what you get with your team. You don't just get what you get with your manager or your career. Anywhere in life, if you feel like a passenger, it's usually a signal you got to turn the flashcard over to the other side and start to understand the formula. And that's not an indictment, right? Like, the world is not helping you do that. The world's there telling you, no, don't turn it over and try to understand it. You just need to accept it. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. And the reason, in this conversation, the reason I keep kind of bringing it to managers is, number one, I focus more on the work context than the non-work context. But number two, for this audience, anybody who does manage, man, if you can walk away from this conversation understanding that every life you touch is more affected by you than anything else, a big part of you feeling more fulfillment is helping them feel more purpose and fulfillment. And once you get that cycle fired up, this kind of shared purpose thing, you're going to feel better about yourself than you ever would leaving the team on the sidelines and running into a men's group and trying to solve yourself, because the world is giving you feedback. The world's got all these loops built into it. And what you're putting into the world is bringing stuff back to you. So if you can start to understand purpose for yourself, start to get that into your team, you're going to start a cycle, and that's going to spin up and get more intense. And this whole thing works together. So not only, again, are we supposed to experience purpose, we're literally built for it. Just like we're built to get freaked out, just like we're built to chase rewards, we're built for purpose. It's less clear how it works. We're also built to share it. And if you start sharing it with people, man, that is crazy awesome. And you see that in the men's groups probably all the time, where 2 or 3 or 4 people will kind of be like, no, I feel the same way about that. And maybe even better, they'll say, well, why don't the 3 of us go do something about this?
Yeah.
And then if that happens, I mean, they come back. What do they say? They're like, that is the best. Right. And it is.
So
yeah.
I want to shout out to my team. So we're leading our second men's mental health event here in Chattanooga. Last year we had our Men's Mental Health Matters 2024 event where we had 200 plus people show up. We had a bunch of vendors, live music, cold plunge, workouts, and it was all about recognizing that there's a mental health crisis happening in the States. And so we provided mental health resources and practitioners to come in and be there, be available, fun for the whole family. A lot of people got involved, and it was not hard to get people involved. It was just to let them know the mission. Here's what we're looking to do. And so for this year's event, we wanted to take male loneliness and make that the central theme. You know, the U.S. Surgeon General shared in 2023 that it is now a national epidemic, male loneliness and isolation. And so we made that the theme, ending male loneliness. And so instead of bringing mental health practitioners, we're bringing communities together. Kickball leagues, car clubs, Dungeons and Dragons groups, like wherever the pickleball, wherever the broad interests are of many of the men we've surveyed who are experiencing isolation, we're bringing them together. And when we spoke to those communities, outside of saying, hey, this is just total free advertising and promotion of building your communities, it was, and do you want to play a role in helping bring boys and men out of isolation so that they're not falling into XYZ horrible statistics? All you got to do is just communicate clearly that mission and that message, and people want to get on board and support, whether they're volunteering, representing a community, or just bringing their kids there to jump on the bouncy castle and be a part of the conversation. It's been amazing how, and having a team on the same page as well. I've got a team of 10 incredible event organizers with me that are making it happen. And it's just been really cool to see it flow. And the what and the how, it's been so funny. I came into it thinking, oh, we need to have all our ducks in a row, and here's everything we did last year. And it was just, I don't care how we do it. I want to give all of you agency on how you do it, how you get the person there, how you get the vendor, how we can secure this or that. Because when we all agree on the mission, the what and the how has just figured itself out. And so that shared purpose, just from hearing you talking, it's just the penny drop for me to go, oh, wow, there it is in action.
Well, and that's just, so all I'm doing here is turning all these flashcards over to the reasoning side. You know what works already. You don't need to know why it works, because you've already experienced hundreds of examples of what works. But once you understand why it works, just like you're experiencing right now, you're kind of like, ooh, that's cool to see to kind of like pull the cover off the machine and see the gears turning and be like, oh, now I really get it. And not only is it cool, but it sharpens you. So when you do it next, you know exactly what to do in order to get the most potent outcome. Because this causal system, when you can reason things and understand them, your potency goes up. It's the same thing about like you ride a bike, and if you're a triathlete or a cyclist, if you get the chain oiled and you get the tires pumped to the right inflation and you get all this stuff, optimized, every ounce of energy you put into the pedals creates more motion in forward motion in the bike. Yeah. If you have an inefficient bike, you're dumping a lot of energy into the bike itself, not into the road and into the motion. and it's waste. And that's the thing that's so important about understanding this. Now, there are a lot of people unlike you, Brandon, who do not know what works. Their reality is, I believe that threatening people works. I believe stressing my team out works. I believe telling my son, you're going to have to, earn my love again works. I believe that. And they're just wrong. So how do we get them to become unwrong? Again, you got to go use the reasoning to show them. This is what I love about the science is a lot of people say, hey, dude, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You think that's going to have any effect?
No.
Say, okay, let me sit you down. Let me explain what's happening inside your son's head step by step while you're having this experience together. And this is undeniable. These are facts. You say this happens. He does this happens. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I see happen. And I see that's just, you're trying to work against how the brain works.
You're trying to activate them, but their brain is shutting them down.
Exactly right.
Yeah, you're wanting one thing, but what you're saying is causing the opposite.
Exactly right. So I find, and there's plenty of people out there, like Richard Branson doesn't need to understand why what he does works. He's one of the best in the world at doing the stuff that he does to motivate people. But if he did understand it even better, which he may, I don't know him, but if he really understands it even better, it gets even better, gets even sharper, more potent, more consistent. So it's good for everybody to actually understand what's on the other side of these flashcards and not just use patterns and these things that you think are facts to guide you through life. It's a little extra effort, and it might not feel great to read and to talk to ChatGPT about why things work and how things work, or talk to me if you want me to coach you or whatever. But man, are you going to be a superpower once you actually have that understanding in your head. Yeah.
So because we're coming up on time. I don't know if you can allow any spillover.
Yeah, that's no problem at all.
Okay, cool. But I will respect your time here. I want to deliver on that promise to our listeners about a starting point. So I can attest to the power of having a clear purpose just being a cheat code in the action and what and how. It is a cheat code. But for someone who's sitting there going like, man, what is my thing? What is my purpose? And they may be stuck in the trap of, I'll just say this out loud without having to explain it. Big, giant, hairy, audacious purposes can be a trap in many ways. What is a great starting point for someone who doesn't feel like they have direction, that doesn't feel like they have purpose right now? They can just get them in the game. And so it's something that they can start to build and, harness over time.
Yeah. Maybe we'll break this down into a couple of starting points, because different people are going to kind of be living a different blocker between them and this. So the easiest starting point is you have to turn the question around. So let's look at the ingredients of purpose in the brain. It's about people and it's about impact. So the question we need to be asking is a question that revolves around, what do my actions do in terms of impact, and who do they impact, or who do I want them to impact? And you can think about purpose as a projection outward. So I can ask myself, Brandon, I'm struggling to understand my purpose, and I'm trying to figure out what I should push into the world that will matter and that it will give me the sensation of purpose and fulfillment. Well, if we just turn the arrow around, instead of saying, what should I push into the world? And we ask, who out there do I already impact? And if you're a business person, this is an easy one, because every decision you make impacts your team, the rest of your company. It impacts your customers. It impacts a market that isn't yet your customers or could impact them, etc. You've got your family, you've got your kids, you've got your friends, you've got community, you've got so many different places where you already are affecting human beings. So stop focusing on you and what you should do to have purpose.
Yes.
Start focusing on the other people.
Yeah.
And as your brain turns reasoning on, because this is what's cool about getting out of your own self-reference loop. As soon as you start thinking about other people, you don't have enough reality in there. You don't know their reality. So the only tool you can use is reasoning when you're thinking about other people. It forces you to think through, what might that person's life be like? What are their problems? What stresses them out? What makes them happy? What's this, what that? And you can make a list. You can just literally go into Excel or something and say, okay, here's a list in column 1 of the people that I affect. And then you go to column 2 and ask yourself, how do they feel about me right now? Some of them are going to be really grateful. Some of them are going to be really irritated with you, etc. And then this might seem a little bit sociopathic, but it's useful to be honest with yourself about this. Make a third column of how much you care about those people, how much it matters how they feel about you, to you.
Because then we can identify maybe we're giving too much credence and credit to people that we really don't care about what they think about us.
Yeah, and we may recognize that we care a lot about community. Mm-hmm. We care a lot about our customers. We care, and we're acting like total jerks to them.
Yeah.
And when you can map across these columns how you affect people, what they think of you, what you think of them, you're kind of building a heat map of, the hottest areas where your brain is most likely to feel purpose if you were to very intentionally cause good outcomes for those people. And it can be small. It can be, YMCA, a basketball league, if you're a coach. It can be your kids. It can be your customers. It can be your team. It can be all sorts of things. But if you are the reason that these people are getting better outcomes in their lives, and it can be little stuff like make a few introductions. Hey, this guy just started a business. It'd probably really help him out if these two people knew each other. Just little stuff like that. And you will feel purpose. This sensation is unbelievably positive, by the way. I mean, the feeling of purpose and fulfillment is better than most feelings you will ever experience. So all I would encourage you to do is do this mapping exercise and then experiment with a few kind of pokes at that universe and be like, I'm going to do a few things that matter to those people. Then just see how you feel. And what I'm going to bank on is you're going to feel so good about it that you're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And then when you keep doing it, you're going to feel purpose. So that's the easiest way, is I would say stop thinking about what your purpose is and what you need to do to put into the world, and just flip the direction around and start thinking about everybody else and how much they value you, how you impact them. What do they think of you? What do you think of them? And you're going to be like, oh man, the answer's here. The answer is somewhere in here.
Fantastic. I love that idea of the heat map, because I just imagine the father who's in a job that they hate, that Monday to Friday, it's just a drag. And an exercise like that can help them identify, oh, wow, this job I hate has a much bigger purpose behind it. It's putting my kid in that summer camp that they've been dreaming of, right? It's paying off our mortgage so that we can be debt free and travel in all these different ways. And it provides perspective in a way to go like, okay, why am I doing this same old song and dance if there is something that's repeatable, like a loop that doesn't always feel as fulfilling in the moment, but being able to zoom out and go, oh, but the broader impact of what I'm doing and these choices that I'm making to keep showing up for work, or keep showing up to AA, or keep showing up to my men's group, there is a broader impact here, which makes the what and the how a little bit more palatable. Like doing your taxes, like bookkeeping. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I'm going to feel a lot more purpose in getting this done. And I don't want to be, and a lot more safety when the IRS isn't breathing down my neck, trying to audit me and get all my records out. Right. So, mate, Evan, this is fantastic. I could talk to you for hours. Your ability to clearly map out and explain something that is so basic in many ways and rudimental and fundamental in human biology and evolution and psyche, but it gets complicated so easily. And I just want to honor, clearly you've done 12 rounds with Tyson in figuring out your purpose and your impact, both professionally and personally. And now that you help others do the same is just an incredible service. So for those of our listeners that may be interested in finding out more about you and your work, how can they follow you and perhaps even reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing is, let's skip all the brochures and just put my email address out there for people to reach out. I'm a very human centric person. I don't run my business or anything I do like a machine, so I'd rather just talk to people. and yeah, I mean, definitely reach out if you feel that reasoning and that imagination piece in your head is tough to reach for. That's kind of what I specialize in, is helping people literally get smarter, and not in the nerd sense, but just like, can your brain make better decisions so you get better life outcomes, better professional outcomes, etc.? And the answer is yes. Every brain can work a lot better, but it's hard to figure out how to flip these switches and get things going. So if that sounds helpful to an individual or a team, definitely reach out. And I don't bite. I just try to help. And that's pretty much it. But yeah, if you want to go to my website, it's core-sciences.com. And I write a newsletter that helps managers talk to their teams about these topics. I do all sorts of stuff, but let's just talk if that's of interest to anybody.
Fantastic, Evan. Thank you, mate. You've been generous with your time and with your genius as well. It's just
there's no genius. This is all elbow grease.
See, that was a trick question. That was a trick statement. Fantastic, mate. Well, thank you for being here. But of course, the greatest thanks goes to you, the listeners, who show up every week to listen to this show, where we prove that there is more than one way to be a man. What do you say, Evan? Have we done that today?
I believe so. Thanks for having me.
I know so. Well, mate, I'll say till next time. And for those of you out there listening, we'll see you next week. This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your hosts, Boyson Hodgson and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guests and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. That is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community as you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.
Hey, it's Boyson here with the Mankind Podcast. We are closing in on 100 5-star reviews of this podcast, and we have a goal. Brandon and I want to get to 250 5-star reviews. So help us out, will you? Please go to the Mankind Podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a review. Thank you. Hey, it's Boyson. On the Mankind podcast, we've brought some incredible guests on to talk about the importance of doing the work to improve our mental and emotional health. And here's the truth. Multiple times over the last 25 years, I've had the help of one-on-one work with some amazing therapists. For me, for my wife, for both of us as adoptive parents, and for our kids. The Mankind Project and Men's Group, though awesome, are not a substitute for professional mental health support. And so I'm thrilled that the Mankind Podcast now has BetterHelp as a sponsor for the show. BetterHelp works online. It asks you what you're working on and then matches you for live one-on-one sessions with a licensed therapist, someone trained to work with you, listen, and offer helpful insights. I'm using BetterHelp. It's super easy, and I like what I'm getting. If getting one-on-one support in the comfort of your own space feels like a good direction for you, I invite you to check it out. Go to the link in the show notes or betterhelp.com/mankind. And if you sign up, you'll get 10% off your first month of therapy.